Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. Hello, listeners. This is your host today, Bill Banham, and joining me on the show today is Nigel Gracie, Business Development Director, Europe and Africa Business at Harrison Assessment International, a company providing employee assessment tools. The tools are designed to help managers throughout the entire HR process so that they become more productive and efficient, leading to increased profitability. Nigel, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Bill. Delighted to be here.
So beyond my reintroduction just now, Nigel, why don't you start by taking a minute or two and telling our listeners a bit about your career background, some of your loves, and what you get up to at your current role?
Yeah. So for the last 20 years, I've partnered with HR functions, learning and development functions, and I've brought some of the best products and solutions on the market. So you name it, training, consulting, 360s, coaching, other psychometrics, pretty much you name it. I've either sold it myself or I've led the sales function selling it. Before that, I can't remember if I shared this with you. I spent about 8-9 years treading the boards as a professional actor, which was something I always wanted to do as a kid. So I'm very glad I got the chance to do that. But you kind of get to an age where you realize a bit more security in your life is required. So that brings us to Harrison. As we said, we're a global psychometric test publisher. I'm responsible for Europe and Africa. So I work primarily with our channel. I've got about 200 channel partners across Europe and Africa, and these are training companies, HR consultancies, management consultancies, exec coaches who add our solutions to the suite of products and solutions that they offer their customers. So I'm accountable for everything that happens, but obviously with my background, a lot of what I do is the commercial side of it, selling it, help supporting business development, all those kind of exciting things. And as you know, I'm off to Ghana to spend the week in February with our distributor there. So another country I haven't been to, so I'm very looking forward to that.
The HR Chat podcast is one of the world's most popular shows, offering insights and tips from HR pros, business leaders, industry influencers, and tech experts. World of Work topics covered include HR tech, AI, leadership, talent, recruitment, employee engagement, wellness, DEI, and company culture. The show, produced by the award-winning HR Gazette, has released over 700 episodes so far, each offering fresh perspectives and tips to help you better understand the changing future of work. Check out the latest HR Chat episodes on your podcast platform of choice and read the latest articles at hrgazette.com.
Very good. Okay, I didn't know that about you. I have so many questions. I'd very much like to turn this episode now in a completely different direction and ask you loads of questions about your 9 years as a thespian, sir. However, our audience are HR professionals and similar, so I guess we should continue down that route instead. Although one thing I do want to pick up from what you just said there is near the start of your answer, you said, for a long time, I've been involved in providing the best solutions. You used the word the best. Now, interesting. I was on the Harrison Assessment website earlier today, and it also uses quite bold language in its boilerplate there. It says the company focuses on providing the most trusted and accurate employee assessment tools in the industry. Now, Harrison Assessments have been around since 1990, so it's no new kid on the block. Nevertheless, that's a heck of an assertion.
Certainly is.
Talk to me a bit about why you guys boldly say that, where you sit in the landscape.
Yeah. So we have a behavioral-based assessment tool built on our research that, in a nutshell, says if people spend 75% or more of their time at work doing the behaviors they most enjoy, they are 300 to 400% more likely to be successful. Because there's no such thing as natural talent. There's enough studies out there, even geniuses like Mozart. Whether it's the 10,000 hours or the 30,000 hours or the 50,000 hours or whatever the actual number is, the only way we as human beings get good at anything is by repetition. We get good because we practice it. Well, we're more likely to practice something if we enjoy that behavior. So everything for us comes back to behavior. So that's how we can boldly make some big claims. Our CEO, our founder, because we're still a family-owned business, Dr. Harrison. I was on he's American but based in Thailand, so I was on a call with him at 3 a.m. this morning. Fortunately, I only have to do one of those a month. Yeah, absolute genius, double PhD, psychology and mathematics. So yeah, a lot of the credit goes to him and his amazing research that he's done into the topic of performance, because that's what we're interested in. What are the behavioral drivers of performance?
You just said there, Dr. Harrison is brilliant. I think you said you used the word brilliant. What does that mean to a team? What kind of inspiration does that offer? What does that add to your motivations when you genuinely believe in your leader?
Yeah, it's I think it's critical. Speaking obviously, like I'm sure all your listeners, with a lot of them are going to be leaders, but they've all got leaders as well. Having someone who you can aspire, who you aspire to, someone who challenges you. I'm pretty seasoned, both professionally and I'm not in my first flush of youth, so yeah, that challenge that comes with it is, but also I think it comes both way on a trust level. They've said, Dr. Harrison, when I joined, he said to me, Nigel, go off and do that. We've hired you to do the job because we know you can do it. So there's a high level of trust as well. Obviously, there's a certain level where I have to refer up, particularly if I want to spend $10,000, but I want to spend a smaller amount. I'm trusted to go off and do stuff, and that my judgment. Why do you want to do something? Well, because I want to do it, because I think it's the right thing to do. So that's quite inspiring as well. And I'm a great believer, and it's something I've learned across my career around trust. And as you know, I used to work for Franklin Covey, and it's one of their methodologies called the speed of trust. I don't believe in trust is earned. I believe, no, I'm going to trust you. That's my starting point. Until you give me a reason to mistrust you, I'm going to start from a position of trust. Now, don't get me wrong. If I know you haven't passed your driving test, I'm not going to loan you my car. So, I'm not going to be stupid about it. But nevertheless, my default position is from an element of trust, as I said, until you give me a reason not to. And as a younger man, particularly I remember in my first sort of leadership role, a long time ago, I won't say the business, but a long time ago, I remember a CEO at that business criticizing me for that, saying you're being naive. And as a younger man, perhaps I didn't have that confidence to stand up and believe in what I thought. I trusted what I was being told. But now I think, you know what, I was right all along.
That is very interesting. You've got me now thinking about how I approach my relationships. I don't know if I fully understand the concept of coming from a place of trust straight away. I mean, I like to try and see the good in everybody when I first meet them.
Yeah.
Collaborate. You know what I mean? I try and be a collaborator and do things with people. Right? But I don't know if that's the same thing. But I do wonder, as someone sometimes I admittedly, sometimes I get paralyzed by indecision. That happens. I wonder for someone who's coming from a perspective of having established trust straight up and until they're proven wrong, are you more likely to make bolder decisions?
Now that's an interesting question. I'm not sure you're necessarily likely to make bolder decisions. I think you're more likely to make quicker decisions, assuming the best of people. And again, this is of people. I'm not saying situations. And again, I'm not talking about being naive and reckless. But I think that the decision making when it comes to people is quicker. If you, as I said, you start from that position of, until you give me a reason not to, I'm gonna trust you.
Okay, we're going in all sorts of directions here, but this is a good conversation, so I appreciate it. Let's talk a bit more specifically about Harrison assessment.
Yep.
If you don't mind. Talk to me a bit about Harrison's approach to talent acquisition.
Yeah. For us, as insightful as our tools are, and we measure 175 different behavioral traits and preferences, so it's really putting people under the microscope. It goes to a depth that not many other assessment providers can go to when it comes to assessing people. As insightful and as interesting, as valuable that is, when it comes to talent acquisition, the value to the company is always in, what am I comparing that person to? What does good look like specifically for that job? And how does the candidates compare to that? We break stuff into two categories. We call it eligibility and suitability. Eligibility is all about, can you do the job? Have you got the skill set? Have you got the knowledge, the experience, the references, the hard competencies, which quite often are reasonably easy to measure? Have you got an accountancy qualification? Well, there you go. I've got the certificate. There you go. I've got it. So very, very important, but not predictor of performance. Because if you don't have those skills and knowledge, you've got no chance of doing the job. So that's number one. That's eligibility. And then for us, it's suitability. That's the behavioral. Have you got do you enjoy the behaviors? Have you got the interests in the sorts of tasks that role is involving? And as I said, we actually measure our different 175, but of course, not all 175 are going to be relevant for every single job. Our research indicates that normally there's somewhere between 30 and 45 behavioral traits that drive performance in any particular job. We break them into three categories. Essential traits, must-haves. High is better. Based on our research, there's a correlation between high scores of that behavior and high performance in people who do that job. Desirable traits, there isn't a correlation between high scores and high performance. There is a correlation between low scores and low performance. So with the essential traits, high scores drive performance. With the desirable traits, low scores can hinder performance. And then traits to avoid. These are behaviors that will actively derail performance. There is a negative correlation between high scores in that behavior and low performance in that job. Now, this is what really struck me when I've worked in previous companies where I've had direct teams that I've run rather than channel. So I've actually had sales reps who report to me. Optimism was both a blessing and a curse, because in sales, you do need to be optimistic. Because sales typically is up and down. It is roller coaster. Even the best sales reps closed 1 in 3 deals. So you're actually going to lose more than you win. So you've got to be optimistic. You've got to be a glass half full kind of a person. But too much optimism is also a problem. And in Harrison language, we call that blindly optimistic. And they're the reps that are telling you, yeah, every deal's going to close. Oh, I had a wonderful meeting. It was absolutely fantastic. Oh, they're going to spend a fortune with us over the years. And then it doesn't happen. And there's lots and lots of stats in sales world about the number of opportunities that are put in the forecasters closing that never actually close. So, like I said, 10 to 15 in each group, 30 to 45 behavioral traits. But of course, which 30 to 45 is going to change completely from job to job to job.
Once in a while, an event series is born that shakes things up. It makes you think differently, and it leaves you inspired. That event is Disrupt HR. The format is 14 speakers, 5 minutes each, and slides rotate every 15 seconds. If you're an HR professional, a CEO, a technologist, or a community leader and you've got something to say about talent, culture, or technology, Disrupt is the place. It's coming soon to a city near you. Learn more at disrupthr.co.
I now want to test you in terms of, I want to get a summary from you, but I'm going to challenge you to answer in 90 seconds or less. So this is the test. Can you, for our listeners, explain your methodology in terms of paradoxical behaviors?
I've worked for other assessment providers. I'm familiar with a lot of the assessments in our industry, so I love paradoxical behaviors. Our research has identified 24 of the 175 that we call paradoxical, in that you cannot class those behaviors as genuine strengths unless they are balanced by their paradoxical opposite behavior. Now, we didn't invent this concept. Aristotle talks about it in ancient Greece. Daniel Goleman talks about it in his emotional intelligence books. But we've worked out how to measure it. So the one I was just talking about, optimism. Optimism is a paradoxical behavior. If you're all optimistic without its opposite, that's where you become blindly optimistic. Analyzing pitfalls is its opposite. If you're strong in both traits, in the Harrison world, we call that realistic optimism. So like I said, not all behaviors are paradoxical, but the ones that are, and we also sometimes talk about this is where a strength cannot be a strength. If you're high in one of the traits, but you're low in the other one. I think that was 60 seconds.
Yeah, 60. I gave you 90. That was pretty good. Okay, and that was I'm sitting here listening. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's very clear. Got it. Tick. Good work. Good work. Okay. So as I often do on this show, ahead of having a chit chat with someone, I go onto their social medias, specifically LinkedIn, because we're business dudes, and see what they're chatting about most recently, and then maybe ask them a question or two about that. And I've done exactly that here. So the first one, you recently shared a post about mastering the art of influencing to elevate your opinions, which is an area that you guys help with at Harrison, of course. So my question there for you is, in your opinion, in your experience, is influencing another way of saying being heard? Because this concept of being heard is something that comes up on this show time and time again, and also being in safe spaces. And personally, I'm all for that. I think that should be part of most company cultures. Or actually, is this term something else? And how do you achieve influencing people, being an influencer yourself within your organization? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation around, there's being heard and there's influencing. And I do see them. They are two different things. Yeah, there's a link. I think it's going to be a big challenge to influence if you're not heard, but you don't necessarily need to be trying to influence to be heard. One of the things on our research around employee engagement is a big thing that drives employee engagement is having your opinions valued. And that doesn't necessarily mean people are going to agree with them, but they value your input. What I would say when it comes to more that influencing, and obviously as a pretty seasoned sales professional, influencing is really important. I like to think I've got some ability. Start small. Don't try and change the world or try and change everything in the first go. Get good at it. As I said before, we get good at stuff because we practice. So find simple little ways that you can have an influence. Get used to having that conversation. Be clear, be concise, listen. One of the things that I would say, and I've said this to other HR professionals, if you're trying to influence the C-suite, if you're trying to influence your execs because you want to do a leadership program or employee engagement or whatever it is, the stuff that obviously lots of HR and L&D people do is learn to talk the language of the C-suite, because they're interested in revenue, they're interested in EBITDA, they're interested in client acquisition, they're interested in client retention. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a great believer in all that great stuff that HR and L&D does empowers those things, but don't talk about, we're going to have a employee engagement initiative. No, this is how, by having highly engaged people, will drive revenue, because highly engaged people work harder. So yeah, link it to what's important to your audience, which, as I said, if it's the C-suite, it is those hard things that businesses are interested in.
So part of it is about understanding your audience, so to speak, and appreciating the language that you should be using in that context.
100%, yes.
Okay, very good. I continue to follow along, so another tick. Thank you very much. Your CEO, Nigel, wrote a blog called "Why Everything You Think You Know About Employee Engagement Is Wrong." What did he mean by that? And I'm going to challenge you to tell me in 60 seconds or less.
In 60 seconds or less, right? I love a controversial topic, and as you know, I spoke about this at one of the Disrupt HRs. Here in the UK, we've spoken about employee engagement for 20 years, and it's going down. It's not going up. So something is wrong, and that's the argument we're trying to post. For us, starts with what we said before about spending most of your time doing the behaviors you most enjoy, because A, you're most likely to be good at them, and B, you're going to be really frustrated if you don't get to use them, because by definition they're the behaviors you most enjoy. So it's not about ping pong tables, and it's not about pizza Friday and having your birthday off. These aren't bad things, but they're not going to drive engagement in themselves. So yeah, get people spending most of their time doing the behaviors they most enjoy. Number 2 is our research has identified 8 key areas which drive engagement once you have got people spending most of the time doing behaviors they most enjoy. And it is going to be specific to the individual. So our assertion is anonymous surveys don't work, because the devil is in the detail. It needs to be specific to you. What's going to engage you, Bill, and what's going to engage me can be very different. Give a couple of examples. Development, for example, is pretty consistent. Our research says well over 85% of the global working population wants some sort of development from their employer, whatever that looks like. So that actually is one of the consistents. But social opportunities. Now, you and I are both pretty gregarious, friendly people. And for me, 20 years ago, as a younger man, the days of beers after work, President's Club, golf trips. Oh, I loved all that. But now, I'm too old. Last thing I want to do is go and talk to people after work. I just want to go home, have a cup of tea, and watch Sky Sports News. So it's got to be specific to the individual, and it changes.
Well, sadly for you then, Nigel, you are out of luck, my friend, because I have dragged you into getting involved with a bunch more disrupts in 2025, and some of those are in the evening. So,
but that's okay, because that's work.
Okay, very good. Very good. Good answer. Good comeback. Now, then, one thing that you wanted to highlight to our listeners today is that Harrison has quite an interesting business model. Can you briefly tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I touched on it a moment ago. Like I said, over 95% of our global revenue is through our channel network. So like I said, I'm responsible for Europe and Africa. I've got about 200 currently, and they go from 1-person executive coaches to 700-800 person training companies and kind of everything in between. And the great thing I love about it is it just means the talent that I've got in my partner community is absolutely phenomenal.
Let's talk about events. We just a moment ago mentioned Disrupt. You spoke at the Harrison Assessments International Europe and Africa Conference 2024. Gosh, that's a mouthful. What events do you have in the calendar for 2025? And I'm going to start your answer for you. So Nigel is going to be present at a bunch of our Disrupt events in the UK throughout this year, in London and Milton Keynes and other places. So he's going to be stepping up for the challenge of 5 minutes, 20 slides, 15 seconds per slide, to wow and excite our audiences. So that's going to be fun. I saw you at the tail end of last year, 2024, at the Connect conference by the Learning Network. Subsequently, I've joined the board there. We had our meeting about a week ago in Manchester. So that might be another one that I see you at, Nigel. What other events have you got coming up in 2025?
So, as I mentioned, I'm off to Ghana in a few weeks' time to speak at some events on behalf of our distributor there. it looks like they'll maybe going to Baku in Azerbaijan to do something similar. Did that last year, which is great. And so I'm looking. Baku is a wonderful city. I'd thoroughly recommend it if you've never been there. A few others planned. So we've got our own conference. Haven't quite decided where yet, but I'm edging towards Sweden, so Stockholm or Gothenburg. And we've got a few more under discussion. There's one that's in an African-based one that kind of goes around Africa. It was in Rwanda last year, which I just went to as an attendee just to basically check it out. And I'm hoping to get approval from the CEO for a sponsorship package very soon to go to there in May. That'll be in Tanzania, so that'll be Dar es Salaam. So again, that'll be somewhere else I haven't been before. So I'm hoping that I've put a strong enough business case together for that one.
My next question can possibly have a one-word answer. Is it fair to say that you enjoy traveling, Nigel?
Yes, and I'm fortunate because it kind of averages out at probably one trip every 6 weeks. Now, obviously, it's never that gap. It's been about 3 months since my last one, but it averages. So I still enjoy the travel, both the places I get to visit, but just doing the traveling, I quite enjoy that. But it's not. If it was every week, that'd be I'd never see my family. Now, my wife and kids might be quite happy about that, but I wouldn't be. So.
Very good. And just finally for today, Nigel, how can our listeners connect with you? So is that LinkedIn? Do you want to share your email address? Are you super cool on the TikToks and the Instagrams and things? And of course, how can they find out more about Harrison Assessments International?
So I'm not super cool. So I'm afraid I'm for primarily LinkedIn, but I do believe I am the only Nigel Gracie on LinkedIn. So hopefully, if you look me up, you should find me quite easily. The Harrison website is always a good place if people are interested, harrisonassessments.com. You can find some contact details there. If people are more than welcome to if they drop me an email, n.gracie@harrisonassessments.com. Gracie is Gracie.
Amazing, Gracie. Very good. Had to do it.
I've been called worse.
That just leaves me to say for today, Nigel, thank you very much for being my guest.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Bill.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.